The massive crystal towers of Nexus Prime stretched into the purple sky like frozen lightning. Inside the main council chamber, beings from 200 different worlds sat in a perfect circle. Some floated in tanks of green liquid, while others existed as pure energy contained in glass boxes. The air smelled of ozone and strange spices from 1,000 different planets. Jake Morrison sat in the small human section and tried not to feel out of place. At 35 years old, he had spent 10 years trying to get other species to take humanity seriously. His brown hair was starting to show gray at the temples, and his blue eyes held the tired look of someone who had been fighting uphill battles for too long. Next to him sat Lisa Carter, a woman with short blonde hair and sharp green eyes who served as his diplomatic aide. The Zephyrian ambassador stood at the center of the chamber. He was tall and thin with pale blue skin and 4 arms that moved like water when he spoke. His voice carried across the vast space without need for speakers. "We gather today to discuss the machine fleet that threatens our galaxy," Zephyrian said. "These devourers have already consumed 17 star systems. They multiply like a disease and cannot be reasoned with." Jake leaned forward in his chair. The devourer fleet had appeared 2 years ago from empty space between galaxies. No one knew where they came from or what they wanted. They simply arrived at a star system, stripped it of all matter, and built more ships. Each attack made them stronger. "Our combined fleets will form a defensive line around the Kepler sector," announced the Altarian High Commander. She appeared as a shifting pattern of golden light inside a crystal shell. "Computer models show a 60% chance of success." Jake stood up. His voice cut through the murmur of conversation that followed. "What about attacking their source? Point instead of just defending?" The chamber fell silent. Then laughter began to ripple through the crowd. It started as small chuckles, but grew into full belly laughs that echoed off the crystal walls. The cetacean representative spoke through his translator device. He looked like a massive whale wearing a mechanical suit filled with water. "Young human, your species has been in space for less than 300 years. You know nothing of quantum warfare or dimensional mechanics." More laughter followed. Jake felt his jaw clench, but Lisa put a gentle hand on his arm. She had seen him lose his temper before and knew it would only make things worse. "Humans are an emotional species," said a voice from across the chamber. "They think with their hearts instead of their minds. This makes them unpredictable and dangerous." "Dangerous to themselves, maybe," added another voice. "Their lifespans are so short they cannot think beyond immediate problems." Jake remained standing even as the insults continued. He had heard them all before. Humans were too young, too emotional, too primitive. They were barely tolerated in galactic society and never truly respected. Most species saw them as amusing pets who had learned to build spaceships. The Zephyrian ambassador raised one of his 4 hands for silence. "The human suggestion shows their typical lack of understanding. A direct assault on the devourer source would require technology we do not possess and coordination beyond any single species. What if we worked together?" Jake asked. "Combined our different approaches?" "Human approaches to warfare are crude and wasteful," replied the Altarian commander. "You fight with emotion instead of logic. Your tactics are unpredictable because they are random." Jake felt heat rising in his cheeks, but kept his voice level. "Sometimes unpredictable is exactly what you need." "The discussion is closed," the Zephyrian ambassador declared. "Humans will be assigned to patrol duties in the outer systems. Your ships are not advanced enough for frontline combat." Jake sat down heavily as the council moved on to other topics. Lisa leaned over and whispered, "You tried, Jake. That's all anyone can do." But Jake was not listening. He was thinking about something his grandfather had told him years ago. The old man had fought in Earth's last great war and always said that the experts were usually wrong about what was impossible. Boy, his grandfather had said, the word impossible just means nobody has figured out how to do it yet. Hours later, Jake and Lisa sat in their small quarters aboard the diplomatic station. The room was barely large enough for 2 beds and a small table. Through the porthole, Jake could see the lights of ships from dozens of worlds coming and going from the station docks. Jake studied star charts on his portable computer. His finger traced the path of the Devourer fleet as it moved through space. Like a plague. They're wrong about us, Lisa. Humans have something these other species don't understand yet. What's that? Lisa asked while unpacking their few belongings. We don't know when to quit, Jake replied. They see that as a weakness, but it's actually our greatest strength. Unknown to Jake, his words were being recorded by sensors hidden throughout the station. The information flowed through quantum channels to a being that had been watching galactic civilization for millions of years. This ancient entity called itself the Curator, and it had been waiting for the right species to appear. A species with the perfect combination of intelligence and stubbornness to attempt what others called impossible. The Curator had seen thousands of civilizations rise and fall. Most followed predictable patterns. They grew comfortable with their technology and stopped pushing boundaries. They became afraid of risk and chose safety over progress. But humans were different. Even when faced with overwhelming odds, they looked for ways to fight back. As Jake continued studying the star charts, the Curator made a decision that would change the fate of the galaxy. It began preparing a message that would reach Jake in exactly 2 weeks. A message that would offer him the chance to prove that one human really could change the universe. 2 weeks passed slowly on Nexus Prime. Jake Morrison spent his days attending meetings where humans were politely ignored, and his nights studying everything he could find about the Devourer fleet. The news grew worse each day as 3 more star systems fell to the machines. Billions of beings evacuated their homes, while the galactic military prepared their defensive line. On a quiet Tuesday morning, Jake received an encrypted message on his personal communicator. The text was simple but strange. Void Nebula Research Station 7. Come alone. Answers await. The message included navigation coordinates to a location far from any traveled space route. Lisa Carter looked worried when Jake showed her the message. This has to be a trap, Jake. Who would want to meet you way out there? Maybe someone who has ideas the Council doesn't want to hear, Jake replied. He was already checking the fuel levels on his small scout ship. You can't go alone to meet some mysterious contact, Lisa said. It violates every diplomatic protocol we have. Jake smiled grimly. When has following protocol ever gotten us anywhere with these people? Against all regulations and Lisa's strong objections, Jake took his scout ship into hyperspace toward the Void Nebula. The journey took 6 hours through the swirling purple and black clouds that marked the edge of civilized space. When he arrived at the coordinates, Jake found what looked like an abandoned research station, drifting dark and lifeless as his ship approached the docking bay. Hidden systems suddenly came online. Lights flickered on throughout the station, and the docking bay doors opened with smooth precision. Jake felt his heart rate increase as he guided his ship inside. Whatever was waiting for him had technology far beyond what the station appeared to possess. The airlock cycled normally, and Jake stepped into a corridor that hummed with barely contained energy. The walls seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, while patterns of light danced just beneath the surface. Jake had never seen technology like this before. Captain Morrison, a voice spoke directly inside his head. Welcome. I have been waiting for you. Jake spun around but saw no one. Then the air in front of him began to shimmer and twist until a form appeared. It looked like geometric patterns made of pure light that constantly shifted and changed shape. Sometimes it resembled a human figure, and sometimes it looked like abstract art come to life. "Who are you?" Jake asked, fighting the urge to reach for his sidearm. "I am called the Curator," the being replied. "I have observed your species since you first looked up at the stars and wondered what was out there." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "How long have you been watching us?" "Time moves differently for beings like me," the Curator said. "I have existed since before your son was born. I watched your planet form and life begin. I saw your ancestors learn to use tools and build cities. Most importantly, I observed as they learned to dream of impossible things." The corridor around them shifted and became a viewing chamber with transparent walls. Outside, Jake could see holographic displays showing the history of human civilization. He watched early humans discovering fire, building pyramids, sailing across oceans, and finally reaching for space. "Your species fascinates me," the Curator continued. "Most civilizations follow predictable paths. They discover technology, expand into space, and then become conservative. They stop taking risks and focus on maintaining what they have built. But humans are different." "Different how?" Jake asked. "You refuse to accept that anything is truly impossible. When experts tell you something cannot be done, you take it as a challenge rather than a fact. This quality is extremely rare in the galaxy." The holographic displays changed to show the Devourer fleet. Jake watched the mechanical ships strip entire planets down to their cores while building endless copies of themselves. "The Devourers are not what they appear to be," the Curator said. "They were created by my people millions of years ago as a test." Jake felt his mouth go dry. "A test for what?" "To determine which species have evolved beyond the need for guidance. My civilization transcended physical existence long ago, but we left challenges throughout the galaxy. Species that can overcome these challenges prove they are ready to join the greater cosmic community." "You're telling me this is all intentional?" Jake could barely control his anger. "Billions of beings are dead because of your test?" "Death is unfortunate, but growth requires challenge," the Curator replied calmly. "Your galaxy has been isolated and protected while you developed. But now you face the choice between evolution and stagnation." The displays showed other galactic civilizations that had faced similar tests. Some had succeeded and moved beyond their physical limitations. Others had failed and remained trapped in cycles of conflict and decline. In all my observations, only humans have shown the necessary combination of intelligence and determination. Your species does not accept limitations as permanent conditions." Jake stared at the swirling patterns of the Curator's form. "But I'm just one person. Even if you gave me the secret to stopping the Devourers, the Council would never listen to." "And you must demonstrate rather than persuade," the Curator said. "I will provide you with the location of the Devourer primary nexus and the theoretical framework for defeating them. But the solution must be entirely human in origin." New holographic displays appeared showing complex mathematical equations and star charts. Jake tried to follow the information, but most of it was beyond his understanding. "The Devourer fleet maintains quantum entanglement across dimensional barriers," the Curator explained. "Sever those connections and the entire network will collapse. However, the process requires precise timing and technology that does not yet exist. So it's impossible," Jake said. "Impossible using current galactic technology," the Curator corrected. "But humans have a history of creating new possibilities when faced with impossible situations." Jake studied the information flowing across the displays. Slowly, an idea began to form in his mind. It was crazy and dangerous, and would probably get everyone involved killed. In other words, it was exactly the kind of plan humans were known for. "I'll need help," Jake said finally. "Good people who are willing to risk everything on a long shot." "You already know who to contact," the Curator replied. Jake thought about his old friend Ryan Brooks, who commanded a small fleet of human exploration ships. He also thought about Dr. Amy Nelson, a brilliant physicist whose theories had been dismissed by the galactic scientific community. "If we try this and fail, we'll probably start a war with the rest of the galaxy," Jake said. "If you do nothing, your galaxy will face something far worse than war," the curator warned. "Stagnation leads to decay, and decay leads to extinction." Jake took a deep breath and made his decision. "All right, I'm in. But I need more than just theories. I need practical help." "You will have what you need when you need it," the curator promised. "But remember, the execution must be yours. I can provide knowledge, but not action." As Jake prepared to return to his ship, the curator spoke once more. "Captain Morrison, your species stands at a crossroads. You can remain safe and small or take the risk to become something greater. Choose wisely." Jake climbed back into his scout ship with his mind racing. The trip back to Nexus Prime passed in a blur as he planned what would either be humanity's greatest triumph or their final mistake. Jake Morrison returned to Nexus Prime with his head full of impossible mathematics and dangerous ideas. He found Lisa Carter waiting in their quarters with a worried expression and a pile of messages from Earth Command, asking about his unauthorized trip. "Where have you been?" Lisa demanded. "You disappeared for 12 hours without telling anyone where you were going." Jake sat heavily on his narrow bunk and rubbed his tired eyes. "I think I know how to stop the Devourer fleet." Lisa stared at him for a long moment. "Jake, you're scaring me. What happened out there?" "I met someone who has been watching our species for a very long time," Jake said carefully. "Someone who believes humans have what it takes to solve this crisis." Jake spent the next hour explaining what he had learned about quantum entanglement networks and dimensional barriers. He showed Lisa the mathematical equations the curator had given him. Watching her expression change from skepticism to amazement to horror. "This is insane," Lisa said finally. "You're talking about creating a localized temporal anomaly. The energy requirements alone would drain the power core of every ship in the human fleet." "That's why we need Dr. Amy Nelson," Jake replied. "Her work on quantum field theory has been ahead of its time. If anyone can make this work, she can." Lisa paced around their small room. "Even if Dr. Nelson can solve the technical problems, you're still talking about 12 ships against a fleet of 10,000. The math doesn't work, Jake." "The math never works for humans," Jake said with a grim smile. "That's what makes us dangerous." Jake sent encrypted messages to his old friend Ryan Brooks and Dr. Amy Nelson using channels that bypassed official galactic communications. He asked them to meet him at a human supply depot in the Tau Ceti system under the pretext of a routine inspection. 3 days later, Jake found himself sitting across from two of the most important people in his life. Ryan Brooks was a tall man with graying hair and the steady hands of someone who had spent 20 years piloting ships through dangerous space. Dr. Amy Nelson was small and intense, with wild curly hair and eyes that seemed to see mathematical equations floating in the air around her. "Let me understand this correctly," Ryan said slowly. "You want to take our entire exploration fleet on a suicide mission based on information from a mysterious alien who claims to be millions of years old." "That's about the size of it," Jake admitted. "The quantum cascade theory is sound," Dr. Nelson said, studying the equations on her portable computer. "But the practical applications are staggering. We would need to modify every ship's deflector array and create a sustained temporal field across several light years of space." Jake leaned forward. "Can it be done?" Dr. Nelson was quiet for a long time, her fingers dancing across holographic displays as she ran calculations. "The power requirements would mean stripping defensive systems from every ship except one. We would need perfect coordination and timing. One mistake and the cascade would tear our ships apart at the quantum level. But can it be done? Jake repeated. Theoretically, yes, Dr. Nelson said. But Jake, this isn't like anything we've ever attempted. We would be making up the science as we go along. Ryan Brooks shook his head. You're both crazy. Even if this miracle plan works, the Galactic Council will never forgive us for acting without authorization. We could start a diplomatic crisis that destroys everything humans have built in space. The Council has already written us off, Jake replied. They assigned us to patrol duties in empty systems while they prepare their defensive line. They don't want our help anyway. Jake stood up and walked to the porthole, overlooking the busy supply depot. Human ships moved back and forth between the docking bays while crews loaded supplies for long missions into unexplored space. Ryan, how many exploration missions have we been on together? Jake asked. 14 over the past 10 years, Ryan replied. And how many times were we told what we wanted to do was impossible? Ryan was quiet for a moment. Every time. But we did it anyway, Jake said. We mapped systems everyone said were too dangerous to explore. We made contact with species everyone said were too hostile to approach. We found resources everyone said didn't exist. Dr. Nelson looked up from her calculations. Jake, this is different. We're not just exploring unknown space. We're talking about technology that could reshape the fundamental laws of physics in this region of the galaxy. Maybe that's exactly what the galaxy needs, Jake said. Maybe it's time to stop accepting limitations and start creating new possibilities. Meanwhile, reports continued to arrive from the front lines. The Galactic Council's defensive preparations were falling behind schedule. 3 major species had withdrawn their fleets rather than risk them in direct combat with the Devourers. Panic was spreading through civilized space as entire populations prepared to evacuate their home worlds. Jake made his final argument. Look, I know this is crazy. I know the odds are against us. But what's the alternative? We sit back and watch while the galaxy falls apart? We let the experts handle everything while billions of beings die? Ryan looked at Dr. Nelson. Amy, what do you think? Dr. Nelson closed her computer and stared out at the stars. I became a scientist because I wanted to push the boundaries of what was possible. This project would either advance our understanding of quantum mechanics by centuries, or kill us all in spectacular fashion. So you're in? Jake asked. I'm in, Dr. Nelson said. But we're going to need more than just the 3 of us. This kind of operation requires a crew that believes in doing the impossible. Ryan sighed heavily. My exploration fleet has 43. Crew members spread across 12 ships. They're all volunteers who signed up knowing they might not come back from their missions. If anyone would be crazy enough to try this, it's them. Jake felt relief wash over him. What do we call this operation? Dr. Nelson smiled for the first time since they had begun talking. The Paradox Protocol. Because we're going to use logic to create something that shouldn't be possible. Over the next 2 weeks, Jake's team worked in secret to modify their ships. Engineer Tony Martinez spent 18 hours a day reconfiguring power systems and deflector arrays. Communications specialist Kevin Brown established encrypted channels that would allow perfect coordination during the operation. Pilot Sarah Walsh ran combat simulations against impossible odds until she could thread a needle at full speed while half blind. The final challenge came when they had to leave human space without alerting the Galactic Council. Jake sent a message to all frequencies as their small fleet departed. This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Terran Expeditionary Force. We are implementing an alternative solution to the Devourer crisis. We know what the experts think of our chances, but humans have always specialized in proving experts wrong. Lisa Carter monitored galactic communications from her station aboard Jake's flagship. "They're calling us everything from heroes to madmen," she reported. "The betting pools are giving us odds of 1 in a million." Jake stared out at the swirling tunnel of hyperspace surrounding their small fleet. "Then we'll just have to be that. 1. As they traveled toward the coordinates the curator had provided, Dr. Nelson made final adjustments to her quantum field generators. Her calculations showed they would have exactly 17 minutes to execute the protocol once they reached the nexus point. "Jake," she said over the ship's communication system, "even if this works perfectly, there's no guarantee any of us will survive the temporal backlash." Jake thought about his grandfather's words about impossible things. Sometimes changing this here. Universe requires risking everything you have. Long-range sensors began detecting massive energy signatures ahead of them. They were approaching the heart of the Devourer fleet, and there would be no turning back. The Devourer fleet stretched across space like a mechanical cancer. Jake Morrison stared through the main view screen of his flagship at more ships than his mind could process. The scanner readings showed over 10,000 vessels arranged in perfect geometric patterns around a massive artificial construct that hurt to look at directly. "My God," whispered Lisa Carter from her station. "How are we supposed to fight that?" The construct at the center defied every law of physics, Jake. "Understood." It appeared to be folding space around itself while energy patterns danced across its surface in colors that had no names. The thing was easily the size of a moon, but moved through space as if gravity meant nothing to it. "All ships report ready," announced Ryan Brooks over the communication channel. "Quantum field generators are online and synchronized." Dr. Amy Nelson worked frantically at her science station. "Jake, the readings from that central construct are off the charts. Whatever it is, it's generating more energy than our entire solar system." Before Jake could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. The Devourer fleet had detected their presence and was moving to intercept. The enemy ships moved with perfect coordination, their formation shifting like a living thing is. They surrounded the small human fleet. "Incoming transmission," reported Communications Officer Kevin Brown. "It's coming from the construct." A voice filled the bridge that sounded like grinding metal and screaming wind. "Biological entities detected. Your presence violates established protocols. Prepare for immediate processing." Jake grabbed his command chair as the ship shook under. "Enemy fire. All ships, evasive maneuvers. Begin the approach to target coordinates." The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. The Devourer ships fought with mathematical precision, their weapons tearing holes in space itself. But the human fleet responded with something the machines couldn't understand: chaos. Pilot Sarah Walsh threw her fighter through impossible turns, using gravitational fields and debris clouds to confuse the enemy targeting systems. "These things fight like they're playing chess," she reported over the static-filled communication channel. "But we're playing poker." Engineer Tony Martinez rerouted power systems in ways that violated every safety protocol ever written. Engines ran far beyond their design limits, while weapons fired with triple their normal energy output. "Sir, I can give you 30 seconds of maximum power, but after that, the whole ship might explode." "Do it," Jake ordered without hesitation. The human ships scattered across the battlefield in patterns that made no logical sense. They used desperation tactics and last-second improvisations that frustrated the Devourer's perfect calculations. When one approach failed, they immediately tried something completely different, but the enemy adapted quickly. The Devourer fleet began focusing all fire on Jake's flagship, recognizing it as the command vessel. Energy beams that could slice through asteroids hammered against the ship's failing shields. "Shields down to 20%, Lisa reported as sparks flew from damaged control panels. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Dr. Nelson's voice crackled through the chaos. Quantum field generators at maximum power. Beginning temporal cascade in 90 seconds. Jake watched his tactical display as 3 human ships were destroyed in brilliant flashes of light. Each loss hit him like a physical blow, but the survivors continued their desperate attack. "All ships, form up on my position," Jake commanded. "Transfer all remaining power to our quantum array." "Sir," Ryan Brooks protested from his ship, "that will leave the rest of us defenseless against their weapons." "That's a direct order, Commander." One by one, the surviving human ships sacrificed their own defensive capabilities to boost Jake's temporal field generators. They stripped power from engines, life support, and weapons to feed energy into the quantum cascade system. The Devourer fleet pressed their advantage, destroying 2 more human ships as they tried to complete the power transfer. But even as they died, the crews managed to route their final energy reserves to the flagship. 60 seconds to cascade, Dr. Nelson announced. Her voice was steady, despite the explosions rocking the ship around her. "Jake, the field strength is approaching critical levels. Anyone at the center when this activates will experience temporal distortion beyond anything we can predict." Jake looked around his bridge crew. Tony Martinez had burns on his arms from a ruptured power conduit, but refused to leave his post. Kevin Brown was bleeding from a head wound, but continued coordinating communications between the scattered fleet. Lisa Carter worked her station with grim determination, even as damage reports flooded in from every deck. "We knew the job was dangerous when we took it," Jake said quietly. 30 seconds, Dr. Nelson called out. "The quantum field is destabilizing. If we don't activate now, the feedback could destroy every ship in the fleet." The main view screen showed the massive construct at the center of the Devourer fleet. Its energy patterns were shifting as it detected the growing temporal distortion around Jake's ship. For the first time since the battle began, the enemy formation showed signs of confusion. 15 seconds, Dr. Nelson said. "Jake, I need to tell you something. The cascade won't just affect the Devourers. It's going to rewrite the quantum structure of space itself across multiple star systems." "Will it stop them?" Jake asked. "Yes, but it might also create phenomena that we don't understand. We could be changing the fundamental laws of physics." Jake thought about the billions of beings evacuating their homes across the galaxy. He thought about entire civilizations preparing to die because no one could think of a solution. He thought about his grandfather's words about impossible things. 10 seconds, Dr. Nelson announced. "All hands, brace for temporal cascade." The Devourer fleet launched a final desperate assault on Jake's flagship. Energy beams powerful enough to crack planets converged on the small human ship, but they were too late. "Paradox protocol activated," Dr. Nelson said. Reality exploded. Light erupted from Jake's ship in waves that moved faster than physics allowed. The temporal cascade spread outward like a shockwave made of pure possibility, washing over the Devourer fleet and continuing beyond toward every connected ship across the galaxy. For a moment that lasted forever, the universe held its breath. Space itself seemed to fold and twist as the quantum entanglement network that connected the machine fleet began to unravel. 10,000 ships that had been moving in perfect coordination suddenly found themselves cut off from their central command. The artificial construct at the center of the fleet pulsed once with a different kind of energy. Its voice echoed across all frequencies, but this time it sounded different, less mechanical and more confused. Primary network disconnected. Backup systems offline. New protocols required. Then silence fell across the battlefield like a heavy blanket. The Devourer fleet simply stopped moving. Ships that moments before had been reshaping matter at the atomic level now drifted powerless through space. Aboard what remained of Jake's flagship, the bridge crew slowly realized they were still alive. The ship was heavily damaged and life Support was failing, but somehow they had survived the temporal backlash that should have torn them apart. Status report. Jake said weakly from his command chair. Dr. Nelson stared at her instruments with an expression of wonder and terror. Jake, the readings don't make sense. The temporal field didn't just shut down the Devourers. It's rewritten the quantum structure of this entire region of space. Outside the ship, the stars themselves looked different. Some burned brighter while others had shifted color completely. Space was filled with new phenomena that had no names and followed no known laws of physics. "Sir," Kevin Brown reported, "I'm receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. The entire Devourer fleet has gone offline simultaneously." Jake closed his eyes and smiled. One human had changed the universe after all. The silence that followed the Paradox Protocol was deafening. Across 12 star systems, the mighty Devourer fleet hung motionless in space like dead monuments to failed conquest. Ships that had consumed entire planets now drifted powerless, while their weapons cooled and their engines went dark. Jake Morrison sat in his damaged command chair aboard the barely functional flagship and tried to understand what had just happened. Through the cracked view screen, he could see the massive construct at the center of the enemy fleet. It still pulsed with energy, but the light patterns were different now, less aggressive and more confused. "Life support is failing on decks 3 through 7, reported Engineer Tony Martinez. His voice was hoarse from smoke inhalation, and his uniform was torn in several places. "But the quantum field generators are still stable. Whatever Dr. Nelson did to them, they're holding together better than the rest of the ship." Dr. Amy Nelson stared at her instruments with an expression that mixed wonder and terror. "Jake, these readings can't be right. The temporal cascade didn't just disable the Devourer network. It's fundamentally altered the quantum structure of space itself across multiple light years." "What does that mean?" Lisa Carter asked from her station. She was bandaged, but still working despite a nasty cut on her forehead. "It means we've accidentally created new laws of physics," Dr. Nelson replied. "The energy patterns I'm detecting shouldn't be possible according to everything we know about how the universe works." Communications Officer Kevin Brown managed to restore contact with the outside galaxy. The responses that flooded in ranged from shock to disbelief to outright panic. Every major species was trying to understand how 10,000 unstoppable warships had suddenly become floating scrap metal. "Captain Morrison," came a transmission from the Zephyrian ambassador. His four-armed form appeared on the main screen with an expression Jake had never seen before: complete bewilderment. "Our sensors detected a massive energy release from your position. Can you explain what has occurred?" Jake leaned back in his chair and managed a tired smile. "We stopped the Devourer fleet." "That's impossible," the Zephyrian replied. "Our greatest minds have been working on this problem for 2 years. No single species has the technology to defeat such a force. Maybe that's why it took humans to solve it," Lisa said quietly. Before the Zephyrian could respond, new contacts appeared on the tactical display. Ships were arriving from every corner of the galaxy, not just to assist the damaged human fleet, but to study what had happened. Scientists from dozens of species converged on the area with instruments that could analyze the impossible phenomena Jake's team had created. The cetacean representative arrived personally in a massive bioship that looked like a living whale, swimming through space. His voice carried a tone Jake had never heard from him before: respect. "Captain Morrison, our gravitational sensors detected temporal distortions that should not exist in normal space. The mathematics involved are beyond our current understanding. How did your species accomplish this?" Jake was about to answer when the air around the bridge began to shimmer. Light patterns formed in the empty space between the command stations, and suddenly the curator stood among them. But this time, the ancient being was visible to everyone present. "The test is complete," the curator announced. Its voice carried clearly through the ship's communication system and out to every vessel in the area. Species designation: human. Status: approved for advancement. Galactic oversight protocols are hereby terminated. The Zephyrian ambassador's image flickered as he tried to process what he was seeing. "What manner of being are you?" "Your energy. Signature is unlike anything in our databases. I am a remnant of a civilization that transcended physical existence long before your species discovered fire," the curator replied. "We left challenges throughout the galaxy to test developing civilizations. The Devourer fleet was one such challenge." Jake felt his anger rising. "You're saying all those deaths were intentional? Billions of beings died because of your test?" "Growth requires challenge," the curator said calmly. "Your galaxy has been isolated and protected while you developed basic space travel and political structures. But true advancement requires the willingness to attempt the impossible." Holographic displays appeared around the bridge, showing other regions of the universe. Jake saw galaxies filled with beings of pure energy, civilizations that built structures spanning multiple dimensions, and technologies that made the Devourer fleet look like primitive tools. The greater cosmic community operates on principles. Your galaxy is only beginning to understand, the curator explained. But humanity has demonstrated the qualities necessary for membership. You do not accept limitations as permanent conditions. Dr. Nelson studied the holographic displays with fascination. The quantum cascade created stable exotic matter. That should be impossible, but the readings are unmistakable. Humans have a unique approach to impossibility, the curator observed. Where other species see barriers, you see problems to be solved. This quality makes you valuable to the cosmic community. The communications board lit up with incoming messages from across the galaxy. Jake could see fear in some of them, but also excitement and curiosity. The human action had shattered long-held beliefs about what was possible. "What happens now?" Jake asked. "Now you teach the galaxy what you have learned," the curator replied. "The quantum effects created by your paradox protocol will last for millions of years. New forms of faster-than-light travel become possible. Energy generation beyond your current understanding. Scientific principles that will advance your civilization by millennia." The cetacean representative's voice crackled over the communication channel. "Captain Morrison, our analysis shows that your quantum cascade has created stable wormhole formations. Travel times between distant stars could be reduced from months to hours." Jake looked around his damaged bridge at the crew that had risked everything on an impossible plan. Tony Martinez was grinning despite his injuries. Kevin Brown was already working to coordinate rescue efforts for the other surviving human ships. Lisa Carter was documenting everything for the historical record. Dr. Nelson approached Jake's command chair with her portable computer. "Jake, the implications are staggering. We've accidentally solved energy problems that have plagued galactic civilization for thousands of years. The exotic matter formations could power entire star systems." "Accidentally?" Jake asked with a raised eyebrow. "Well, maybe not entirely by accident," Dr. Nelson admitted. "The quantum field equations I used were based on theoretical work that assumed certain impossibilities were actually possible." The Zephyrian ambassador's image reappeared on the main screen. "Captain Morrison, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I formally request that humanity share their technological breakthrough with all member species." Jake was quiet for a moment, thinking about all the times humans had been dismissed and ignored by the very same council. "We'll consider it," he said finally. "But this time, humanity gets a real voice in galactic affairs." "Of course," the Zephyrian replied quickly. "Your species has clearly earned full membership status. The curator began to fade from view. Remember, Captain Morrison, this is only the beginning. The universe is far larger and more complex than your galaxy imagines. There are challenges ahead that will make the Devourer fleet seem simple by comparison. Will you help us prepare for those challenges? Jake asked. I will provide guidance when requested, the curator replied. But the solutions must remain your own. That is what makes humanity valuable to the cosmic community. As rescue ships arrived and began assisting the damaged human fleet, Jake reflected on how much had changed in a single day. Humanity had gone from galactic outcasts to essential partners in cosmic civilization. The universe would never underestimate humans again. 6 months after the Paradox Protocol changed the galaxy forever, Jake Morrison stood in his new office overlooking the expanded human quarter of Nexus Prime. The view outside his window showed something that would have been impossible just half a year ago. Human and alien children playing together in the station's central park while their parents worked side by side on projects that were reshaping Galactic. Civilization.Jake now held the title of Galactic Integration Coordinator, a position created specifically for humanity after their demonstration that conventional thinking had serious limitations. The old hierarchy based purely on technological advancement had crumbled, replaced by a more collaborative approach that valued different perspectives and unconventional solutions. The quantum effects left by the Paradox Protocol had indeed transformed everything. Dr. Amy Nelson led a joint research initiative with scientists from 12 different species, developing technologies that combined human creativity with alien expertise. Her latest project involved harnessing the exotic matter formations to create pocket dimensions for emergency evacuation and resource storage. Jake, you need to see this, Dr. Nelson said as she entered his office carrying a portable holographic projector. We've made another breakthrough. The device activated and showed a 3-dimensional model of local space. Glowing threads connected. Star systems in patterns that resembled neural networks. The quantum cascade created stable wormhole formations throughout this entire region of the galaxy. Travel times that used to take months now take hours. Jake studied the display with amazement. How many civilizations are using the new network? All of them, Dr. Nelson replied with a grin. Even the species that were most resistant to change have had to admit that human solutions work. Trade has increased by 4,000%. Scientific collaboration has reached levels never seen before. A chime indicated an incoming communication. Lisa Carter's image appeared on the wall screen from her position aboard one of the new mixed fleet vessels. She now served as deputy coordinator and was overseeing the integration of human crews with alien ships throughout the galaxy. Jake, we have a situation developing near the galactic rim, Lisa reported. Long-range sensors are detecting massive structures approaching from intergalactic space. They're requesting formal contact. Jake felt a familiar mixture of excitement and apprehension. How massive are we talking about? The lead structure is approximately the size of our moon, Lisa said. But Jake, the energy signatures are unlike anything we've encountered. This makes the Devourer fleet look like children's toys. Within minutes, Jake's office was filled with holographic representations of galactic leaders. The Zephyrian ambassador appeared alongside the cetacean representative and delegates from dozens of other species. But this time, they were looking to Jake for leadership rather than dismissing human input. Captain Morrison, the Zephyrian said, our combined fleets are moving to establish contact protocols. We request human participation in the first contact team. Request? Jake asked, with amusement. 6 months ago, you wouldn't let us observe your meetings. 6 months ago, we were fools, the cetacean representative admitted. We have learned that wisdom often comes from unexpected sources. The approaching structures turned out to be representatives of a civilization that had been watching the recent galactic developments with great interest. They called themselves the Architects and had been traveling between galaxies for millions of years, helping younger civilizations make the transition to cosmic awareness. The lead architect was a being of crystalline energy that communicated through direct quantum transmission. When it spoke to the assembled galactic leaders, its words carried the weight of eons. "We have observed the recent transformation of your galactic civilization with approval," the architect said. "The integration of the human species has accelerated your development beyond our projections. You are ready for the next phase of cosmic evolution." Jake found himself chosen to represent not just humanity, but the entire galaxy in negotiations with these ancient beings. It was a responsibility that would have terrified him a year ago, but he had learned that humans had a talent for rising to impossible challenges. "What does the next phase involve?" Jake asked. "Participation in the Galactic Alliance," the architect replied. "A confederation of civilizations from across the local group of galaxies. Your region of space has been isolated while you developed basic space travel and quantum understanding. But your recent breakthrough qualifies you for membership." The implications were staggering. Jake learned that there were thousands of galaxies filled with advanced civilizations, all connected by quantum networks, similar to what humanity had accidentally created. The universe was far more crowded and complex than anyone had imagined. Commander Ryan Brooks arrived from his position leading the new Mixed Fleet Initiative. Human ships now served alongside vessels from dozens of other species, and the results had exceeded all expectations. Human tactical thinking combined with alien technology had revolutionized both exploration and defense. "Jake, the architects are offering to establish permanent quantum gateways between our galaxy and theirs," Ryan reported. "The technological exchange possibilities are unlimited, but with opportunity came new challenges." The architect revealed that membership in the Galactic Alliance required species to contribute to the defense of cosmic civilization against threats that operated on intergalactic scales. "There are forces in the universe that seek to consume or corrupt entire galactic clusters," the architect explained. "The Alliance exists to coordinate responses to such threats. Your recent demonstration against the Devourer fleet suggests your species has the necessary qualities for this responsibility." Jake thought about his grandfather's words about impossible things and smiled. "When do we start?" The ceremony admitting the local galaxy to the Galactic Alliance took place on Nexus Prime, with representatives from millions of civilizations attending through quantum projection. Jake stood with leaders from every major species in his galaxy as they formally joined a community that spanned countless stars. The Zephyrian ambassador, who had once dismissed humanity as primitive, now spoke for the entire galaxy. "We pledge to contribute our unique perspectives and capabilities to the greater cosmic community. We have learned that diversity of thought is not just valuable, but essential for solving impossible problems." After the ceremony, Jake walked through the expanded human quarter of Nexus Prime. The changes were remarkable. Human colonies that had once been isolated outposts were now crucial nodes in a growing network of cooperation and discovery. Species that had barely tolerated humanity now actively sought human input on complex problems. Lisa Carter joined him in the observation lounge, where they had first discussed the Devourer crisis. "Any regrets about leaving the quiet life of diplomacy behind?" she asked. Jake looked out at the stars that no longer seemed distant and impossible to reach. Human ships moved between them, carrying crews from dozens of worlds, while quantum gates flickered with the light of intergalactic communication. "Someone once told me that one person couldn't change the universe," Jake said with a smile. "Turns out they were wrong about that too." A priority communication from the curator interrupted their conversation. The ancient being had become humanity's guide to cosmic civilization, and today's message brought news that would test human ingenuity once again. Captain Morrison, the curator's voice filled the lounge. The Alliance has detected unusual activity in a neighboring galactic cluster. Something is systematically destroying quantum networks across multiple galaxies. They are requesting human assistance in developing a response. Jake and Lisa exchanged glances. The universe had just gotten bigger and more dangerous again. "Well," Jake said, straightening his uniform, "I suppose it's time to show them what humans can do when the entire cosmos believes in us." As alarms sounded across Nexus Prime, announcing the formation of a new intergalactic task force, Jake realized that humanity's real journey was just beginning. They had proven that one human could change the universe, but now they would discover what humans could accomplish when billions of civilizations were counting on them. The stars held new promises and challenges, but for the first time in cosmic history, humanity faced them not as outsiders looking in, but as essential partners in shaping the future of existence itself. The species that had once been dismissed as too emotional and primitive now stood ready to defend the universe against threats that spanned multiple galaxies. They had been wrong to underestimate humanity, and the cosmos was better for their mistake.